Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, the podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Your hosts are Steve Becker and myself, Chris Whitman, and you can find out more about us at our website, horrormakesushappy.com. Before we get started, this is the trigger warning. We're going to be talking about horror culture and horror things, which could involve such sensitive subjects as murder, child abuse, rape, F-bombs. There will be this horror podcast. We talk about bad things. If that's not your cup of tea, what are you doing here? Go away. Store's closed.
Coming you a second time. Sorry,
yes, I'll fetch you a vache. Coming up, we'll be speaking with musician and film curator Sarah Nydorf. She's worked with multiple artists and is also part of the Final Girls Berlin Film Festival. But today, we have the company of author Ross Jeffery, known for such works as Tome, Juniper, and Only the Stains Remain.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Hello, welcome. Well, welcome. I'm welcoming myself. Anyway, thanks for having me.
Feel at home.
Yeah. How you guys doing? Welcome to the show.
Yeah.
Yes.
Glad to be here. Before we get into the meat of the interview, we want to let us know what we're currently working on.
So on the 23rd of May, I've got a book coming out, The Devil's Pocketbook, it's a couple of days away. And that's through Darklit Press. And then in October, November, I've got a book coming out through Clash Books called I Died Too, but They Haven't Buried Me Yet. And I'm currently working on a Western.
Okay.
Interesting. Is it a horror Western?
It's a horror weird Western.
Nice.
Not splatterpunk, not like that kind of splatter Western, just I love Westerns. So it was about time I wrote one, and I love horror, so I mixed the two together.
Okay.
Nice.
I believe it was Ms. Laurel Hightower that suggested you to us. And I don't remember why the hell I brought that up. Oh, that I was going to ask if she had told you anything about the theme of the interview, because I don't know how much we talked about via email.
No, I have listened to you guys. So I listened to Jonathan Jan's one, which was absolutely phenomenal. And I listened to Josh Malaman's as well.
Okay. Yeah. So you know what you're getting
into. I know what I'm getting into. I want you to tell me what's wrong with me.
We'll do our best. What are your first memories of scary things?
My first memories of scary things, it's a long time ago. I think I must have been about 3 or 4. And the first time I felt absolute dread was there was a spider. I don't like spiders, and it was in this little kind of coal chute that we used to have in our garden. And I was out there with my sister, and I saw it, and I was kind of like petrified. I couldn't move, but she quickly picked up a brick and threw it at it, but missed the spider and hit me.
Oh no!
So that was like double whammy.
Yeah.
But then also there's another time, which I'm too young to remember, but my parents said I had an asthma attack with it, and I was like laying in my cot, they said, and then a spider was on the ceiling, and it kind of gradually fell down, like on its web, and kind of and as it was falling, its legs were coming out.
Just dropping directly towards you with all the legs out, no less. And did you say while you're having an asthma attack?
No, I had an asthma attack because of it.
Okay. Well, yeah.
But yeah, and then they're kind of like formative years. But then as a young kid in the playground at school, like I remember vividly in primary school, there was a time where, because Halloween in the UK is not a big thing. Well, it wasn't when I was little. I remember, but at Halloween, they always used to put scary film on. And I remember being in the playground and kids talking about Candyman.
Wow.
And then kind of talking about, like, oh, yeah, you have to say it in front of a mirror, and you got to do it this many times and then turn the lights off and all. So I remember that happening. I remember going home. I must have been about 8 around this time. And then my parents don't really have a filter. And so they'd gone to bed, and then I'd kind of like wandered out and then started watching these kind of late night horror films that are around kind of Halloween. And the first one I watched, and I was probably 8 or 9, was The Exorcist, because it was on, and it absolutely terrified me. And since then, horror has been this kind of thing that I can't get enough of.
Okay. What did you like about The Exorcist?
What
was memorable? Let's put it that way.
As a child, it was just because I still have a soft spot for the film. Like I love the film, but I read the book as well, and I love the book. But as a child watching it, it was just seeing something that was completely like, it wasn't about like someone stalking around murdering someone. It was just the loss of agency. And I can only say that now as an adult because I didn't know what that word was back then. But that just completely losing yourself over to something like a foreign entity and not being able to do anything to stop it. And then obviously all the kind of special effects in that film were crazy. It was just the terror, I think, of losing the ability to have control. And as a kid, when you're like, oh, my parents will look after me, like seeing what happened to Reagan and then her mum, and like actually it kind of was the first time I was like, oh, the mum actually can't do anything to stop it. And I was like, oh dear, what have I done?
Uh-oh. I'm in danger.
Yeah.
Okay, so Exorcist and Candyman was mentioned on the playground. Do you remember anything else? Doesn't have to be a movie, could be a book or a story or a cartoon or
I bought this book recently for my own children because as a kid at school, I wouldn't say I'm an intellectual. Let's put it that way. So I was quite thick as a kid. And I did like reading, but I liked comics.
Okay.
And this is nothing to do with comics, but I like comics anyway. And so I like books with lots of pictures in. That was my happy medium. And I picked up a book when I was at primary school, and I must have read it, I don't know, about 600 times. I even borrowed it from the school and then took it home and kept it, which is I probably got a massive fine on that anyway. But and it was called Not Now, Bernard.
Okay.
And it was just about this really simple story of this kid who goes out into his garden and finds a monster in his garden. And he brings it back inside, and his parents are just too busy. So they're like, the dad's hammering something into the wall, and he's like, "Oh, Dad, I found a monster in the garden." He's like, "Not now, Bernard." And then he goes to see his mum, and then does the same thing. And then the monster kind of eats Bernard, and then kind of is going around roaring at the parents, and they're like, "Not now, Bernard." And so it's like the monster's there, and then he goes up to the bed and goes to sleep in this bed. And that story alone, there's nothing gruesome in it, but it was just the kind of, as a kid, I was just like, again, parents. It was like, oh, yeah, those parents don't have time for them, don't have time for this kid, and he's just been eaten by a monster, and they don't even realise that the monster is now living in their house. They just think it's their kid. And it was that, and it's just such a simple story. It's like only about 12 pages long, but.
And the funny thing is that reading that as an adult, you realize it's the kid actually did turn into the monster.
Yeah.
Didn't have to get eaten by anything. It's completely symbolic.
Yeah.
Yes, it's an allegory.
And it's, brilliant. And I bought it just so I could share it with my kids. And I've read it to them numerous times as well.
You can traumatize them as well.
Yeah. I'll be like, this is what you're going to turn into. Now just sit down, eat your food.
This is why we ignore you.
Yeah.
Daddy cries because you drink, or Daddy drinks because you cry,
or both. Whatever.
Yeah, sometimes at the same time.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Did you have any friends or family who were fans of horror in your childhood?
My mum and dad were massive fans.
Cool.
I say fans. They were fans of horror fiction, not so much film. And growing up, we had this kind of like massive bookshelf that. As I've already said, I was quite thick as a child. So, but on this bookcase was just all these like amazing hardback books. And my mum, for my dad, every year used to buy him the new Stephen King hardback when it came out, and all these kind of. So he had like every single book by Stephen King. You had James Herbert. We had Rosemary's Baby on there, Exorcist, like all these books. And I used to just remember picking them out because obviously I couldn't read them, but I was like looking at the covers and things like that. And then my mum. She claims to be the reason why I write horror, but I don't believe her. But she said that when she was pregnant with me, she was reading Pet Sematary, and I think it was Rosemary's Baby. It was one of the two. But she remembers reading Pet Sematary, and she was just like, "That's why you write horror, because I gave that to you." I was just like, really? Don't think that's a medical thing, but anyway.
Just let her have it.
Yeah, let her have it. Proud mother.
Yes,
but But they just have a huge bookcase full of them. And then what really pissed me off was when I decided that I had a love of horror and stuff like that. It was
they gave them all away.
It was probably around about the time I was at university, and I'd gone to university, and I came home, and all of them were gone. And I was like, what have you done with all the books? And they were like, oh, well, we just gave them all to the charity shop because we didn't want them. And I was like, you what? And then I was like, what? And they were all like first editions. Like, I'm not kidding you. Like first edition Exorcist, first edition Legion, like all these amazing hardback books. And I was just like, I cannot believe you've done that. So I didn't talk to him for a couple of years.
It's like the meme all over.
Yeah,
right.
And then so now I've been journeying the process of kind of trying to buy all those books back. So like, I love Stephen King, so I've been trying to get his whole kind of, and also like the covers that I remember as a kid as well. Like just trying to get those hardbacks with those covers. Pretty much got them all. I'm missing like 6, but they're really hard to find. But yeah, but they used to love horror. They read my horror. My dad's more of a fan of kind of horror films. My mum's a bit of a scaredy cat when it comes to that. But yeah, I come from a family that enjoyed horror and didn't have a filter. So I was watching stuff all the time because they just left me in my room with my VHS and my TV, and I just, it was my happy place.
Okay. Do you think that they imparted any wisdom to you in terms of how to interpret the material? Or do you think you maybe just picked it up through, seeing, their reactions kind of like, I want to say through osmosis, but that's not exactly,
vicariously.
Yeah, I think they just kind of left me to it. Like, not now Bernard. They just left me kind of to do it. And I just devoured everything I could find. Like, I love Alfred Hitchcock films, all that kind of stuff. So I like, and I also went to, like, when I went to uni, I went to study film. So I kind of like had a very vast kind of knowledge of horror films, and like from independents to majors and straight to video stuff and all that kind of thing. And then book-wise, I started quite late reading for pleasure, that is. So I was around about like when I was like 20, just because I had a horrible English teacher at school and she used to bully me, and I wasn't very good at spelling or reading, and she put me off. And it was always like kind of having to read in class, and I'd start reading and I'd stutter. So then she'd get me to start over again, and every time I stuttered, she'd stop me and I'd start again. So then I just
very helpful.
Yeah, very helpful. Lovely teacher. But then so I just stopped reading. And then obviously not reading, you don't kind of learn how to spell and the language and all that. So that came later. But when I discovered the kind of thrill of reading for myself, that's when I kind of made all those connections and started actually paying more attention to kind of horror as a genre and kind of tropes and all that kind of stuff, and what works, what doesn't. So yeah, my parents really just abandoned me.
Thanks, Mom, Dad.
Yeah, thanks.
So you were afraid of spiders. There were things about The Exorcist that you're afraid of, but other guests have maybe not reported, but described what you could say is like a dividing line between, before this line, I was afraid of horror, and after this line, I wasn't. Was there sort of a dividing line for you, or?
No, not really. As a kid, I was quite lonely. So I had a sister, but she didn't really like me. I had a really small family. So just my mum, my sister, my dad. He was an orphan, and there was only kind of one grandparent on my mother's side. So there was like 5 of us like the whole time. So I was quite lonely, and there wasn't a dividing line between because spiders still scare me now, but I just had a kind of an affinity with horror. Like even the kind of like the stuff I was watching, it just made me kind of like I had this kind of thrill when watching it. It wasn't like that it horrified me. Okay. Not a lot really scares me apart from spiders, like in that kind of like that real physical need to get away or anything like that. I think, and I've had to deal with spiders because I've got 2 young girls, and like I have to deal with it, but I don't deal with it nicely. Unfortunately, if there's any kind of vegans listening or anything like that, I actually kill them because can't stand touching them. Or I humanely trap them and then try and get them out of the house.
There you go. We'll go with that one.
Yeah.
No bricks involved.
Yeah. But yeah, so there wasn't really a kind of, I was petrified before, and then I kind of, there's not a line, I don't think. It was just a gradual, probably desensitizing to it.
That happens too.
Yeah. Because as I said, I had no filter. There was no one to say, oh, you can't watch that because that's too scary. It was just, I just watched stuff and absorbed it. And yeah, there have been possibly a couple of films that scared me, but not many.
In childhood or different parts of your life?
Different parts. So as a child, it's going to sound really weird, but The Never-Ending Story scared me.
It's not
okay.
Doesn't sound weird at all.
Okay, well, I'm in a good place then, because I can't remember what the wolf was called, but that thing petrified me.
Gamork. Yeah, that has actually come up in a couple of shows, actually.
Oh yeah, that, and then what was the other one that really scared me? I think it was called Return to Oz with the Wheelers.
Oh yeah. They had permanent rollerblades for feet or something.
Yeah, and it's just really weird. There's a really weird scene where it's like skating around after Dorothy, and then you think its face is on its top of its head because it's looking down, and then it looks up and it's got another face, and it was like that. That made me jump. And then obviously I can't remember what the antagonist in it, the witch woman or whoever she is, I can't remember, but all the different heads she had in a room, I remember those scaring me as a child.
Justifiably. That is creepy.
Justifiably, yeah. Arachnophobia, when that came out, absolutely.
Well, yeah. I mean, I kind of saw that one coming.
No.
Yeah.
Have you heard they're doing a reboot?
I have, and I won't be watching it.
No?
No. Because
once was enough.
Once was enough. Well, who knows? I might torture myself and watch it. But knowing special effects nowadays, it'll probably look...
As I was about to say, I've heard it's going to be mostly CG, so it probably won't be as scary as the original.
Yeah, okay.
Have you ever watched Lord of the Rings?
Yes, love Lord of the Rings. And Shelob is one scary mother. I'm not even going to go there.
She is.
I
don't even have a thing for spiders, but that was terrifying. Just the animations and the way that everything moved on it.
Yeah.
Still gets me chills.
And even it must be something to do. When I watched the remake of It, kind of in the top, near the end, obviously, when he transforms into that kind of big thing, even just those kind of appendages, was making me think, oh my goodness, this is getting close to the bone. But the original, the Tim Curry one, that kind of weird creature thing didn't really do it for me.
How do you feel about crabs?
Crabs, I don't mind crabs. They're just, I don't know.
I asked because you mentioned the appendages.
Yeah, it's just spiders, really. I don't trust them. They got too many legs, and they move too quickly. They're there 1 minute, and then you look, and then they're gone, and then you're just where's that gone?
Mm-hmm. It's the small ones
and the big ones,
and the big ones.
But yeah, what else? As an adult,
the trick is to not look away.
Yeah, and it jumps on your face. Yeah. As an adult, I think the only film I really kind of felt uneasy about recently was there's two. Doctor Sleep, I thought was a phenomenal adaptation. And there's a bit in that with the. Have you guys seen it? I don't want to ruin it.
Yeah, I've seen it. There's
a bit in there with the kid with the baseball glove who kind of gets attacked by the group that are trying to get his shine. And there's a couple of elements in it. And even the first bit when the little girl's by the lake and she sees, what's her name? Jake, something the Hat. I can't remember.
Rose the Hat.
Rose the Hat, that's it. Just at the lake, and then they're just having a conversation, and then you look away, there's no one there. And then when it comes back, they're all surrounding her. And then
that was creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't hold any punches in that film either.
No, not at all. It was,
like you said, the baseball kid and even the girl at the beginning. It did not hold any punches.
No, and I liked it because it unsettled me. I was getting to a point where I was getting bored with things not affecting me in a certain way, and that one did it. And the other one that actually made me jump back in my seat and swear at the TV was called Barbarian.
Yes.
Bloody hell. I was sitting there and I was thinking, okay, right, I can see what's going on here. and then in my head, I'm thinking that's Pennywise, so he's obviously going to be horrible.
Yeah, of course.
And it just threw me. And then they go down the stairs, and then you know what happens. And and I was like it gave me such a physical, like, and I jumped out, like I jumped away from the screen when it happened.
Yeah, it's very unexpected.
Yeah. And then I paused it because I was like, what the hell just happened? And then I was like, this must be near the end. That's it. Story's finished. And I paused it, and there was like another hour left. And I was like, where does this go?
I think I did the same exact thing, mainly because I wanted to, zoom in on the gore too. But I did the same thing. As soon as it got to that scene, I paused it like, wait a minute. What?
Yeah. I was like, is this a short horror? Like, I was like, yeah, that one was cool. And I also really liked, didn't really scare me again, but more unsettled me was the menu.
Mm-hmm.
That was very good. That was very well done. I enjoyed that. But then, I loved The Thing when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm. I
loved the X-Files. X-Files petrified me, some of those episodes. Again, I was watching those when I was, at secondary school. So like some of the stuff they were doing was pretty cool. I completely lost the train of where we were going with this, but
we kind of veered off into adulthood a little bit, and then whatever X-Files was. But we're on childhood, and I guess how about Halloween? Did you participate in Halloween as a kid?
No, we didn't.
Oh, that's right. No, we covered that, didn't we? Because
like we didn't have it here, and we did have it. But
was there ever a time in your childhood when you were actually terrified of something in real life?
I was terrified of my dad being taken away. So my dad is quite the toxic masculinity role model. Mm. So he was a builder, and he when I was a kid, he went and did some work for someone, like doing a patio or something outside, and he's a very proud man. And we were going on holiday a couple of days later, and he was like, "Oh, I'm going to spend all this time doing this house because I need to get it done so we can get." Because they pay him cash in hand. So he was like, so I'll get that money and we could take it with us on holiday. Mm-hmm. So we were like, okay, that's cool. And then one night he came home, and I remember being upstairs with my sister, and like there's me in my like Thundercats pajamas, and she's there with her My Little Pony pajamas, just like hugging the kind of like banisters, like trying to listen when we shouldn't have been. Mm-hmm. And he was like, oh, effing this, effing that. And he was like, I'm going to kill him. And then my mum's like saying, oh, what's happened? And he's like, oh, he's not paying us. He's not giving me the money. And I've done all the work. And he said he's not going to get it. And he says we don't deserve the money yet because he didn't want to pay us yet. And then like I can remember my mum saying, oh, don't go. And then like just kind of almost seeing their silhouettes on the wall opposite us, like so we could kind of see what was going on. And there was like they were pushing each other. She was trying to stop him, and then like I like heard her chain hit the floor, and then like just heard the door slam. And then I was like, oh, okay, let's quickly go to our bedrooms. And then in the morning, I remember getting up, and he wasn't there. And I was like, oh, where's Daddy? And then my mum was like, oh, he's not here. He's gone off somewhere. So I was like, oh, okay. And I was thinking, like, we're going on holiday like soon. He better come back. And then he did come back, and he had like this big cut on his head. And then I only found out years later that he'd gone round there to talk to this guy, and then basically as soon as he'd opened his door, my dad had headbutted him.
Oh, wow.
And then kind of left. And then instead of coming home, my dad just drove straight to the police station, handed himself in and said, I've just assaulted someone, so you're probably going to need to arrest me. And they said, oh, we never normally have people do this. So come on in, sit in the cell, and if anyone comes forward, we'll kind of let you know and discuss it, but they might not want to come forward. So it was all kind of back in the day when they probably didn't do due diligence on that. And then he came back home and he had this cut on his head, and it was just like, oh, I fell over or whatever. But it wasn't until years later I found out, because it just came out in conversation. But yeah, that was the kind of thing, because I was like, well, he went away then, like he might go away again. And it was so odd because my dad was always at home, like he was always there. And then that morning waking up and he wasn't there, I was just like, oh, what happens if he does go away, like, and he doesn't come back? So I think that
introduces that fear as a possibility now.
Yeah. And it's like, it was hard to kind of understand as a kid, but it was one of those moments that kind of stuck in my mind, like, oh, he could not come back. Like, but obviously I didn't know that he was in prison, like had gone to the cells or whatever, but but it kind of grew on me as I kind of got older. Because he was, like I said, he was very masculine. Like, you didn't show your emotions, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. But he was always a constant presence. Like, he'd come home from work every day and I'd sit with him and he'd show me his hands where he'd been working and like all the cuts he'd got and like we'd wrestle and stuff like that. And it was just the thought that could all be taken away, or just that he would never like not appear in the morning was quite a weird thing for a young kid to kind of deal with.
Right.
Yeah.
I could see how that might have
been unnerving.
Not only been unnerving, but been a lasting impression.
Yeah.
Let's flip it around to ask the opposite. Was there ever a time in your childhood when you felt completely safe or calm or at bliss?
Yeah, loads.
Good.
As I said, yeah, that's it, finished. As I was saying, like before, I was quite a lonely kid, and the moments I have of bliss and peace and tranquility were all the time. Like, I played with toys. Like, I had like Star Wars figures, He-Man figures, you name it, I kind of had it. We didn't have a lot of money, but so I used to get them up like boot sales and stuff like that, and jumble sales and things. And and it was just those times of like my family were in the house and obviously just surrounded by people, but I was alone, if you know what I mean. Like, they were around, but I was just lost in this world, this make-believe world that I was kind of doing, like playing with these figures, making up these intricate storylines, and like just like playing on the stairs or in the garden. And like those times I was completely like in my element. And the other times I think are times that I watched films with my dad, because I'd sit on his lap and we'd watch stuff on the TV. And like I was brought up on, like I watched Jaws when I was little, and that film for me is one of the best films ever.
Still is.
Yeah. And I watch it like religiously. Like, I'm not joking. I've got a massive poster of it on my wall here.
How do you feel about Jaws the Revenge?
All
right, yeah. That's enough. We'll leave it at
that. Yeah. Jaws 1, Jaws 2 I can cope with. And Jaws 3's got some good points, but
yeah.
But yeah, sites will be very disappointed.
I'm sorry if there's fans of Jaws the Revenge out there, but
no, one of our previous guests, that was actually her favorite movie.
No, you're kidding me.
No, yeah. she was pitching it as a so bad it's good.
Of all times, that's the one with. Is that the one with? Who's the lead?
Michael Caine.
Michael Caine. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
That is a bad film. But anyway, so like watching Jaws, and I remember I watched all like the Indiana Jones films we watched together, Star Wars we watched together, kind of the old Lord of the Rings cartoon film that was there. Like Never-Ending Story, Dark Crystal, kind of all those kind of films. Like I used to watch them with him, and then also from that, like we used to watch westerns, and that's where my love affair of westerns came from, because it just reminds me of sitting with him on the sofa and just watching them and getting carried away with it. But yeah, they're the times where I was completely at peace, felt safe, secure. Yeah, they're the ones.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Let's move into teenage years. What are some of your favorite scary stories or books or movies during your teenage years?
Teenage years, I went through quite a big slasher phase. And I think when I was a teenager, like stuff like Scream was coming out, and I Know What You Did Last Summer and all of those kind of things. But I also started to take kind of film seriously then. So I was watching stuff like, Rosemary's Baby and Psycho, like kind of all those, so many, like all the zombie films and all that kind of stuff. So I was watching those at that time. But I think one of the ones that I picked up and I loved during those teenage years was the Nightmare on Elm Street films. Again, there was that there was the thrill of it being a horror, but also the kind of almost had the same kind of effect on me as like The Exorcist, that kind of loss of agency. So like when you were asleep, you weren't even safe. Like that for me was quite scary. Even just kind of playing that over in my mind, I was just like, oh yeah, nothing bad can happen to you when you're asleep. And then Freddy,
guess again.
But yeah, those films, and like just Freddy as a character, like he was awful. Like I'm funny, but he was just terrifying. And then book-wise, I read It for the first time. That took me ages, like because as I said, I wasn't a very good reader back then. But
It's a long book.
Yeah, and I remember getting it from my dad's kind of bookcase, and like I kind of hid it upstairs, and I was up there kind of like just reading it a couple of pages at a time, and then hiding it when they come in because I didn't know I know they didn't have a filter, but I think words for me, and I think for them as well, words when you're reading it is a lot different than watching because it's your own imagination, and I think they knew that I had quite a large imagination, so I think I was just a bit nervous that they would see me with it. But yeah, and I read that and I was just like, wow, this is scary. And that was the first time like reading a book that I felt truly scared. And I was just like, oh, this is good. But then I still wasn't confident enough to like go and pick up another book. But because I think I wasn't a confident reader, and I picked up it, and I was like, at the end of it, I think I was just a bit exhausted. So I was just like, oh, I don't know if I can do another one. But yeah, and then like comics, like I love comics. Like I had the Clive Barker
nice
kind of graphic novels that came out. I had the Crow graphic novel.
Nice.
Lots of others. There was, I think they were kind of related to Clive Barker. There was quite a few I had.
There are so many good Clive Barker graphic novels.
Tapping the Vein, I think, is one that I remember, which is really good. And yeah, I just like loved those. And then I used to read quite a lot of. You read a little bit and it's like turn to page 12 or turn to page 17.
Choose Your Adventure.
Yeah, kind of like that. And it was those books I loved as well because some of them were pretty dark.
Yes.
So I liked that. And I think in those teenage years, I started to kind of like a little. I'm not a huge fan of fantasy. I think The Lord of the Rings is probably as fantastical as I get. But I remember kind of like diving into a little bit of fantasy then, like The Hobbit, I remember reading. And like the trolls in that and things like that were quite. I remember that was quite probably early teenage years that I remember reading that one. But yeah, and then it was a big slasher thing. And I think at that point when I was a teenager, I was able to also, because I had like a little job and got pocket money, I was able to just, instead of relying on my parents to get stuff, I could go to the shop and go to like the video store and then buy my own kind of like secondhand video of something I really wanted to watch, but my parents wouldn't get. And there was one time, so I must have been like 14, and I came home and my sister had got two videos out. I can't remember how. Anyway, it's around about the time, but she got two videos out from the video shop. She's older than me, and she got out Child's Play and From Dusk Till Dawn. So I don't know how old that made me, but I can't remember how old that film is. And I remember walking in to From Dusk Till Dawn being on. I was young, and I remember walking in and then watching it, and I like there was the bit when all the vampires come out, and I remember just walking in and just turning like my head into the lounge, and then could just see all this carnage happening on the screen, and I was like, "What the hell is that?"
It's a great part to walk in on.
I was like, "I need to see that film," and she was like, "Oh, mum won't let you," and I was like, "Oh, no, go on." So then I walked in, and she started it again, and then we watched it together, and then. My mum was still at work, and then I was like, "Oh, can we watch Child's Play now?" Because I'd never seen that one, and she was like, "Oh yeah." So she put it on, and as soon as it kind of went in, and then like it started, my mum had come in, and we hadn't realised, and then she wandered into the lounge, and she was like, "What are you watching?" And it was Child's Play, and I was thinking, you should have seen the other film. Like,
he says, "What are you watching? The Lesser of Two Evils?"
Yeah. And I was like,
too late.
you should have seen the other one. And then, but then she like marched my sister because I think she was still underage, so she must have been like 17. Oh. So she marched her down to the video store and then kind of marched, and she said, "You wait out here." So I waited outside and just looking in like through like a Terminator 2 cardboard cutout or something else, and like looking in, and then could see her just march my sister up to the counter and start shouting at this like little young kid who's behind her, who's given her a film underage and all this. And then just remember walking back out and then just having been just dragged back to the house, like along the street, and then just thrown in and be like, "Go to your rooms." But then it was weird because I went to my room and then I just watched like Day of the Dead or something, and I was like, "What's the difference?"
Right. That's actually where I wanted to ask you about, is because earlier you said that there was no filter; you're allowed to watch everything.
Yeah. But
now you're talking about how you weren't. So.
I think it was because someone else had given it to us because I don't know why. I don't know. My parents are weird. But it was
Fair
that
enough.
case of like I could watch whatever I wanted, like in my room, like if we had it in the house.
I wasn't trying to imply that there was going to be logic there. I was
But yeah, but
pointing out the lack of logic.
I remember, I don't know whether it was supposed to be kind of a life lesson for me, like to be like, no, you can't do things underage or whatever. But anyway, yeah, I don't know what it was, but yeah. And then I went up and watched like another horror film.
Well, it sounds like the lesson was learned. You know,
It was, yeah.
So, in a similar vein, I was going to ask you about it for the same reason, because you had previously said that you had no filter, but then you are also saying for it that you were afraid that they didn't think you were going to be able to handle it and they wouldn't approve. And I guess what you just said a second ago about the difference there being that they didn't sort of they didn't give you it. That you took the book on your own.
Yeah.
Even though it was in the house for you to take. So I guess in some way there was at least a partial filter.
Yeah, I think so. It might have also been around the time I was having my kind of recurring nightmare, or the kind of ones we spoke about, like because I think we haven't got onto that yet, but I'm probably sure you're going to ask, is the kind of recurring nightmares as a teenager.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to talk about it now.
Yeah, it was just, again, it was that kind of like of my dad going and being gone, like waking up and being kind of like fatherless, like not having anyone there. I think that plagued me quite a bit. And it was like, well, that, you know, and I think at that point, they still hadn't told me what had happened. So I was kind of still unawares, but they were like, you know, that was just a day. Like you need to kind of like stop thinking so much. And because I've kind of like played like with my own toys and read all this kind of graphic novels that were kind of graphic, like I started to have kind of dreams that like, yeah, my dad was dead or he was gone and I was alone, or with my mum and my sister, but it was kind of like there was no father figure. So I think it kind of like where their kind of filter kicked in, it was around the points where I probably had a very overactive imagination. And some of that's because I was left to my own devices. So I had to kind of make things interesting for myself. And then I think it was probably that was their kind of like filters, like, oh, that, you know, although he's doing all of this, you know, he needs to not do that or something because it's going to mess him up. Who knew they were right? But yeah, I think that was kind of the only kind of reoccurring dream as a teenager that I had was kind of, yeah, my dad not being there, which is weird because I've not really verbalized that until this talk. So yeah, interesting.
Well, if you haven't thought about that before today, then the other thing that I was thinking while you were talking about this is that you mentioned that your father was an orphan. And so I'm wondering if there was maybe some part of you that was thinking about what his experience must have been like as a child. And then, you know, thinking how frightening that must have been for your father. And then maybe relating to that and going, well, I don't want to be in that situation. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I think, yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. Like, like he's told us stories about when he was an orphan, and like he I'll only tell a couple because there's too many, but there was one time where, so he was an orphan with his brother. So their mum was too ill to look after them, and their dad had gone away, another dad that had disappeared. And they were orphaned together, so they were put into this kind of care home run by nuns who were called the Sisters of Mercy, who he tells me they had no mercy whatsoever.
They never do.
No, and there was one time where they got told, like my dad got the cane because he was the younger one, but his brother got locked in like a closet, and they wouldn't let him out. And then so he was stuck, and he would be banging on the door trying to get out, couldn't get out. And then he hyperventilated and threw up in there. And then when they eventually let him out, they told him that he had to eat his sick back up before they let him out because they weren't going to clear it up, and he had to do it.
Wow.
So stuff like that. Like he says it hasn't messed him up. I'm sure it has. Like, yeah, they used to get beatings all the time, and like he was quite a naughty child, so he'd get caned quite a lot. But I think his brother suffered the more kind of damaging, kind of emotional abuse, that kind of thing was more done on his brother than him. But yeah, it's something he rarely talks about, and it's only as he's got older that he kind of has kind of started to talk about it. But I think, yeah, as a kid, knowing that he was an orphan has probably played somewhere along the line of that. And a very astute comment.
It has never come up on the podcast before, but I can relate to some of that in that I had an ex stepmother who did something that caused me to vomit and then also tried to make me eat it back up. So that was, I can understand how unpleasant that is and was.
Wow.
Yeah.
New level of understanding of how horrible your stepmother was. I mean, I've heard about it before, but that's another level, man.
Yeah. I've got a 3-inch scar on the underside of my chin where she was trying to shove my face down into it and cut my chin open. Fortunately, my father walked in just as it was happening, and I remember him screaming, "What the fuck are you doing to my child?"
Wow.
And took me to the hospital to get stitches. The last thing I remember was the sheet coming down over my head because it had this little circle in the middle that they're going to put over my chin.
Mm-hmm.
And that fun times.
Yeah. I you didn't even cover this in the childhood bit, but like as a child, I was kind of like scared of my parents as well because they only because you just mentioned that I just remembered some stuff that like as a kid, like my parents ruled with an iron fist.
Mm-hmm.
Like I used to get hit, like I used to get like the slipper around the back of a wooden spoon, like used to just get cracked with that if I did something wrong. And I remember one time in particular, I don't think I swore. I think I must have just said something that my mum was just like, right, that's it. And I remember her getting a bar of soap and then just ramming it in my mouth. And she literally forced it through my, like, I didn't want to open my mouth, but she was forcing it in. And I remember and I still remember it now, like the feeling of the soap getting kind of caught in my teeth as it kind of grated through. Cause I was like, no. And then there was the taste of, I can't get out of my mouth.
Yeah.
But then, I think that as well, there was that kind of awkward kind of bit of my childhood where I was like, I don't step. You can step this far, but no further because you're going to get hit.
Right.
But I didn't suffer like other people have suffered from their kind of parents and stuff like that. But yeah, they did dish it out a bit.
Right. Anywho,
that's another podcast.
Yeah. Right. Well, the next question on the list was whether or not there was a time when you were a teen that you were actually terrified of something in real life.
I think we covered that.
Yeah. kind of covered that. How about in your teens, a time that you felt completely calm or safe or bliss?
Again, like my room in our kind of family house was the place that was mine. And I kind of hid in there away from things that were going on outside. And I just found, again, I sound such a loser, but I found such like joy in just toys and trinkets and things that I had and like films. Like I had my own VCR in my room and like I just had like shelves of films and, I would watch them until they kind of like broke and then I'd have to like sellotape the kind of film back together. And then, so I think that really, like I didn't, like, teenage years were so difficult. It was like a period of my life. I think I just tried to survive because I didn't really like school and because I didn't like school, I didn't really invest myself in kind of making friends at school because I was just, a bit of a kind of loner. So like coming home, I'd immediately go up to my room and like go up there and then like my parents kind of almost had to peel me out of that room to kind of come and eat dinner with them and then like, go back up there straight afterwards. Yeah, and I think it was just films. And I think at that point, I had discovered John Carpenter.
Okay.
And I was just devouring and rewatching. Like I love his direction. So I was just like devouring all of that and like watching them again and again. And like In the Mouth of Madness, like that was a brilliant film. That was one of my favorites. But yeah, it was just in my room, like just tinkering around with stuff. And I'd also kind of discovered at that point, I probably can't get done for this now, I might as well tell you. This is probably when I was like 17, 18. I started renting films from from a certain rental place, and then I'd get it home, and then I would undo the screws on the back of the VHS, take out the film, put in a blank one, and then put the other one into like the blank case, and then take it back to the shop, take it back to like Blockbusters, and be like, this film's like got nothing on it. It must have been magnetized.
No.
And then they were like, oh, okay, and then they take it in.
Okay.
But then I didn't do it at the same place.
I was just
that
about
often.
to say, how often were you able to get away with that?
Well,
Yeah, right.
I went to a few.
You went to a few different video places.
Yeah. And then like I had that film, and I was like, and it was before, like, you know, back in the day, like a film would come out at the cinema, it would take like a year for it to come out on VHS, and then another year for it to do something, and it was too long.
Yeah.
And so I used to do that, and then I used to like kind of like take them to school and then rent them to my friends. I'd be like, oh, do you want this? It's £1, you can borrow it for the night or whatever, and it was income.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of my happy place, like in my room, like that's where I felt safe and secure.
Let's jump into adult stuff. So you mentioned Dr. Sleep, Barbarian, The Menu. Let's see. The two things that you said about those three things that you repeated was just unsettling. With the girl by the lake looking away, and then, you know, there being no one there, and then all of a sudden there was everybody there. What was the thing that was unsettling about The Menu?
The menu was just
Tone.
Like all the way through. And I didn't, because what I tend to do with books and films is I don't research them before I read them or watch them.
Good call.
So I
looked up way too much about The Menu before I watched
it.
Like
I put the menu on because I'd seen it about, like, the poster and stuff, and I was just like, oh, okay, that's out. That's all I knew. I knew it had the Nicholas, I can't remember, the guy who plays Beast in the films, and
Nicholas Hoult.
That's the one. And it had Ray Fiennes, and I was just like, right, okay, this looks quite good. So I remember putting it on, knowing nothing about it, and then the unsettling part for me was that all the kind of people that were there to enjoy the food, like as it gradually unfolded, and they're sitting at the table, and then, like, you know, the guys get the tortillas that have got like these accounts on that they've, like, you know, done something bad, and then like just how it all unraveled, and then how there was no escape, like they were kind of stuck there. There was, like, they were just trapped, and all of their kind of baggage was just being kind of thrown out into the room. Again,
Lots of control.
Yeah.
When it comes back to that.
But yeah, that was pretty cool. And it just unsettled me. A film and a book that unsettled me was Bird Box by Josh Malerman.
We've interviewed him.
No,
that's right. You'd listen to that one.
Yeah. Which is a great episode, so go and listen to it.
Yes.
But the film, so I read the book first, and the book, I have to say, has probably got the best element of horror in it. It's just, in my mind, it is one of the best bits of writing that I've read in kind of horror, which is the kind of birthing scene. And again, it's like loss of agency. But, like, have you read the book, guys?
I have not.
Oh man, you should read it just for that scene. So they're kind of up in this kind of attic, and then she's kind of giving birth, and the way he does it is just full on tension and dread and the unknown. And then you can kind of, so I think the stairs have been pulled up, so no one can get up there, but you can hear what's going on in the house below, and there's like things getting broken and things going on, and then you've got this woman giving birth up in the lot, and it's just incredible, like the whole thing. And I was reading it, it's giving me like goosebumps, and I was like panicking, and I was just like, what on earth is going to happen? And then crazy shit happens, like, and which is not in the film. And then so after that, I was like, oh, I'm going to check the film out. And then again, like, the film unsettled me again, which was kind of like, there's a scene in the film which isn't in the book, which is also, for me, was kind of unsettling, which was when she's under the blanket with the two children, and then she's
on the river.
Yeah,
in the boat.
Yeah,
that wasn't in the book.
Oh no, that was. But the conversation where she's kind of like talking to him, and she's like, "We're going to get there, and one of you is going to have to look," and she's trying to decide which one it's going to be. And then the little girl's like, "Oh, I'll look," and then it's like, "No," and then that bit, like, it's just like, "Oh, you're going to sacrifice one of those because you don't want to look yourself," and it was like, you know, it was just too much.
It's dark.
Yeah. But yeah, like, books as an adult, like, I really struggle to watch a film as an adult and get scared. It's more unnerving now. that gets me. Like I haven't been, apart from Barbarian, that actually just made me jump out my skin. But it made me jump out my skin, but it didn't scare me, if you know what I mean. But
yeah, it's unexpected.
But as an adult, I'm finding it really hard to be scared by a film. But books do it to me time and time again. Like as I'm reading book, because my imagination just goes crazy.
Yeah, exactly. It's different with a book because it's not something that you're watching. It's being created in your imagination. So you're almost more present.
Yeah, definitely. And as an adult, that's like I find like when I'm scared, it is normally when I'm reading a book. Yeah, I'm just trying to think if there was another film. No, I can't think of it.
Okay. Was there ever anything in your adult life so far that has actually terrified you in real life?
Yes, Time.
I can relate.
That just came up on our last podcast.
Oh, did it? Oh.
I am also currently dreading time because time is finite and it will just end one day. And there's so many things to do.
Yeah. There's something about, and I think it's since having kids as well, like it really, if I think about it too long, I end up getting really anxious about it because I'm like, there's like how many, like if you put it like this way, like how many books will I release in my life? Like there's only a finite amount of number, like only finite, like, I don't know, like 20, like 30, like that's a small number. And then it's like, well, how many times am I going to like kiss my kids goodnight? Like there's only that certain amount of time. And like, am I doing enough with the time that I've got? Am I wasting time? Am I spending too much time on things that don't matter?
Welcome to midlife.
Yeah, like it's...
Is that what it is? Because 42, you're in your 40s too, Steve? I mean, this is a midlife thing, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you get that point in your life where you're like, have I done enough? Do I have enough time to do what's left?
And I think as well, because like you're 40-ish, and it's like, that's half my life. Like, you know, if you live to like 80 and whatever, but like, I'm just like, that's half my time gone on this earth, and what have I done? And like, is it gonna, you know, I don't want to leave a legacy, but like, I'm like, will my kids, and I'm sure they will miss me when I'm gone, but I mean, like, will they remember things that we did that was fun? Like I've worked quite hard in becoming the filter from my parents to how I parent my children. So like there's some good stuff that my parents did, but there's a lot of bad stuff. And I'm like, right, I want to be the filter for that so that they can enjoy life to the full. And have I been able to do that? And like, yeah, like, will I see my children have children? And like, if I think about it too long, it becomes too much. And I'm just like, whoa, you need to just stop, Ross.
Can relate. Yep. Flipping that around, has there been a time in your adult life when you have felt completely calm or safe or at bliss?
Yes, just any time that I am with my family, like my wife and my two children. Like we've been going to like in the UK, we got lots of, they're called National Trust properties, so they're like properties of historical relevance and things like that. So like quite really old houses and castles and things like that. So we've been spending a lot of time, because I'm 40, I got like a really 40-ish adult birthday present, which was like basically a family pass to all these sites, so you can just go and visit them for free. So we've been doing those, and like the time spent as a family together, they are the moments that fill me with joy, like just being with each other. And I think that's the point as well, is sometimes just being with each other is enough. You don't have to fill it with lots of stuff. Although when I'm thinking about time, I'm like, this must fill this time. Fill it. But sometimes it's just sitting there and being in the same room. Like we might all be doing something different. Like I might be reading, my wife might be reading, my kids might be playing a game. And it's just like, just being together. And that security in that as well. Like we can all be who we are, and we're not trying to impress each other. Like we love each other for who we are. And it's not kind of like, as my childhood was like, I would always spend my time in my room. The way our family works is that we spend time together, and that's something I never had really, apart from like watching a film with my dad. That was like an hour and a half, and then like I was in my room or escaping away somewhere to play a game by myself.
Well, actually, it's funny that you say that, because the note that I made earlier when we were talking about this answering the same question for the childhood section, you said that the family was present in other rooms while you're playing games with Star Wars figures and He-Man figures in your bedroom. And there's still a sense of security, whether you're in the same room or not, of at least they're there.
Yeah.
So it's maybe not as not as different as maybe you're thinking it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's still the element of that stability.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
The next two questions I want to ask you, I'm going to give you at the same time. You've probably heard this already now, because it could be the same question or same answer or different. But what is your favorite movie, and what movie have you watched more times than any other?
I knew you were going to ask this.
It's a tough one, that first one.
I might have to give you a couple. So, movie I've seen the most is possibly Jaws, because I literally watch that film every year. Or if it's on TV and it's anywhere in, if I'm flicking the channels and it is like almost halfway through, I'm like, right, we're watching it from here.
Yep.
So yeah, Jaws. Favorite movie, bloody hell.
Can be multiples.
Yeah,
so like up to 4.
Doctor Sleep.
Yeah.
The Fall.
Ooh, Tarsem, huh?
Yeah, that film is killer. Beautifully shot. Like everything about it, like is and just the story itself is incredible. I've got to have a Western in there. So,
Tomahawk.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I've got a Congregation of Jackals here on my desk. I haven't got to it yet. It's by the same guy who wrote or directed that as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I also read what was it? I've got it here. Wraiths of a Broken Land. So that was his kind of other one, which is, well, I got it because someone said it's based on Bone Tomahawk. So I started reading it. It's not based on Bone Tomahawk at all. It's a completely different story. But the story is kind of the same vibe of Bone Tomahawk. Like it is brutal. But yeah, so I've got Congregations of Jackals as well, which is the other one, which is a Western. So yeah, Bone Tomahawk. And then...
you don't have to pick 4. 3 is good.
No, I got.
Yeah, 3 is fine.
I got to go with the 4th. I'm going to go with. Can I have them as like a series, but one film?
Sure.
Okay, I'll go for the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Really?
Yeah,
that works.
Why that one? Because that's what's the word I'm looking for? But a
non sequitur.
Well, it's not like the others.
It's not. I think what the reason I picked it is because. So when I say Lord of the Rings, I mean like Lord of the Rings and then also the Hobbit films, like those all together, because I watched them with my kids, and it, like when we were watching them, it was like I was making a memory of something we're going to like look back on and do again, and we've watched them numerous times as like all together, like as a family. But yeah, I'd say those, and also some of them are pretty dark. Like I forgot some of it, and I was like watching it with my at the time, 7-year-old, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about this bit. Let's quickly fast forward. But yeah, I think those for me are kind of and also just the magic of it. And I remember reading them as a kid and seeing them how well they were done as an adult were just crazy good.
We haven't talked about The Fall or Bone Tomahawk. Thoughts on those?
Bone Tomahawk, possibly one of the best Westerns I've ever seen. Like gruesome,
just the dialogue, the way that they do the authentic, and the gruesomeness.
Dialogue is amazing. And Kurt Russell just rocks up and just blows the whole kind of film out the water. He's an amazing actor. And also, I can't remember the other guy who wears the white suit. I've forgotten his name.
Oh yeah,
he was in. What was he in? Party of Five or something? I can't remember. Is that him?
What about him?
He's almost like the dandy in it. I forgot his name. Anyway, he his character is phenomenal, and just every bit of that film was so detailed, and yeah, just the gruesome. That was a film I went into knowing nothing about it. I just knew it was a Western, and it had Kurt Russell, who's one of my favorite actors, and I was just like, let's give it a go. And then The Fall is just incredible. If no one has seen it, you need to change that straight away and go and check it out. For the storyline alone, a stuntman hurts himself, and there's this little girl who's at the hospital, and he's tripping out on morphine, and he's telling her this story, and she's just imagining it, and it's just storytelling in its purest form, and what happens on the screen, the shots, the color, the vastness of it, it is incredible. Also, another film I forgot to mention, sorry, Requiem for a Dream. Insane.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
I'll go with that one as well. But yeah, like, The Fall is incredible. And I haven't watched it as much as the others, but it's probably one of the best films I've seen.
Do you see any common threads about what kinds of horror you like?
It's weird because it scares me, but I like it. But it's like possession horror, like religious horror, like kind of that loss of agency again. And and the book I've got coming out with Clash Books is kind of a possession tale as well. And like writing that, I kind of scared myself, which is probably good. Yeah, I was getting into the kind of headspace of, what happens if you do just completely like give yourself over to something else and you were no longer you? Like, it was really like tripping me out. And then I was thinking about time again, and I was like, oh, come on. But yeah, like I'd say that, and like I'm a big fan of like writing it myself, but also reading it of because like cryptids and things like that don't scare. Like, I'm not scared of vampires. Like, I think vampires are pointless. Like, I don't like creature feature stuff. Like in books, like I'm talking like boogeyman and all this kind of stuff. Like, that doesn't scare me. What scares me most is monsters of men and women. So like people that are just horrible, because it's so prevalent in the society we live in anyway. Like how someone can, like walk into a school in America and like shoot loads of kids, and I'm just like, what on earth? And then like serial killers and things like that, and like rapists and murderers and all this. I'm fascinated with it because I'm just like, how can people be so cruel? But then I'm also horrified by it because I know it happens so often.
Because how can be?
And also, you just don't know when someone is going to switch and just like have a break and then just kill someone or murder someone, or like. We had something in the news recently of like a kid that was killed by their parents, and it's just like you just have no idea when someone is going to break. And again, that's probably, like I said before, like that loss of agency. Like, you're fine 1 minute and then something happens, or you have a breakdown, and then you just lose yourself and bad stuff happens. Yeah, so I think that's kind of what scares me.
So I was trying to think of some way or wondering how this loss of agency might tie in with some of the other themes that have been coming up, because something I like to do sometimes is think of things in terms of like having a major and a minor in college or university. I don't know if that was part of one of the episodes that you listened to, but for me, the themes that keep coming up, the major would be your familial relationships, being close with your mother and your father and your kids, and fears related to the loss of those kinds of relationships. And then the minor would be loss of agency, trying to think of, is there some way that these are connected? And I do see some potential thoughts, but rather than put words in your mouth, let me ask you first, do you see any kind of connection between them?
I think... Yeah, that's pretty damn good. I feel like I should be paying you guys for this therapy.
We've got that before.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think you're correct. Like, I think, the major chord is that kind of family stuff, even if and you picked out some threads as well. Like, I thought like my family life as a kid was pretty shit, but also like, knowing that my parents were in the house, I was still safe. Like, that's something I hadn't even thought about until now. And I think it's, that loss of agency, like you said, as the minor, like it does fit in there. And if I think about it too much, I'm probably going to go on like have a mental break. But I was just thinking like, imagine having this life and I've also just finished reading Pet Sematary, but like just having this life with your family and then having that loss of agency that makes you just not remember them, or having it being taken away because you've either got a mental illness or something, or you get possessed. Yeah, like that, the risk of all of that going is probably tied. They are probably tied together, like you said. That love I have for my family and wanting to be together and have all those memories, but then the loss of agency attached to that being actually at any point that could be taken away.
Yeah, it's almost like that the familial importance boosts that loss of agency fear.
Yeah.
Because you have so much more to lose.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, that's incredible.
kind of tangential to that, what I was thinking was that, for example, going back to your father being an orphan, he had no control over that. He had no say whether or not he lost his family. And likewise, I think your fear, particularly, for example, of that night that he went away and you weren't afraid, that you were afraid if that were to happen again, something you couldn't control. It was something out of your hands. And the thing about horrible men and women and how can people be so cruel? You had mentioned your father being sometimes having, that toxic masculinity, and maybe wondering, how does that happen? Why does that happen? Why? Trying to wrap your head around that.
Yeah.
Not only with your father, but, other people in the society that you grew up in, because I'm sure it wasn't just your dad that.
Yeah. I think as well, it's just that kind of like talking about like that side of the toxic masculinity thing. It's like I never want to be like that. Like I never want to have that particular gender role set out for my kids. Like if one of them wants to be a builder, let her be a builder. Like, and I try as much as I can to kind of be that kind of filter, like I said before. Like, so I love my children because I love them. Like, they could do whatever they want. They could, be whoever they want to be. And it's just the thought of losing that all is, and not having enough time.
Yeah. So we've already kind of touched on why it is that these things might be important to you. So then the next question is why horror? Because wouldn't it be possible to maybe explore some of these themes in other genres? For example, war movies really deal with a lot of loss and tragedy.
I think that horror is such an underrated genre in kind of processing emotions and stuff like that. I was on a podcast yesterday and they mentioned that quite a lot of my work deals with grief, and they were kind of saying that, like your works for like as for him, he was like, your works kind of like hit the kind of subgenre of grief horror. Like you write it so well, and you like the feelings and thoughts and emotions that you get behind it are, things that everyone can feel. And I get what he's saying, because like I didn't even know it, and then I look back on it and I was like, oh, actually, they do tick some boxes of grief along the way. But I think like horror is a kind of genre where everything is available. It's almost like a dry run for like the worst day of your life, like in quite a lot of ways. And I feel it's such a vast kind of genre. You can manipulate it to kind of answer many questions and many kind of feelings and thoughts and emotions. And I personally, I can't see it in other genres. I have read, I used to read sci-fi quite a lot, and like Philip K. Dick and lots of others, and George Orwell and H.G. Wells, and kind of loads of the classics. But for me, I think with horror especially, and the genre of horror, there's no holds barred, and you can kind of flex it however you want. And I don't know if that's an answer, but for me, I just feel that horror can kind of encapsulate every genre, where every other genre can't really encapsulate horror.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's an answer we've gotten before. Is that you can make anything, you can add any other flavor to a horror, but you can't really add horror to something else without it consuming it and becoming a horror.
Yeah. That was more succinct than my answer, so we'll go with that
one. There's a threshold.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny that you brought up the grief topic, because I was actually thinking of that. I don't know exactly why I chose not to use that word, but the word I used instead was loss. And of course, grief is the response to loss. So it's kind of funny that you then brought that up.
Yeah, it's strange, because when I was talking to him, I was saying this to him, and then he made me question my own sanity. But I said that I hadn't really suffered much grief personally, like in my life, because I had such a small family. Like, I have not known the personal kind of tragedy of grief. Like, all of my grief has almost been one step removed. Like, so the only person there's two people in my family that have died were my granddad, who was obviously one step removed from me, like my mother's father. He died this year, and I loved him. He was so cool, and we used to chat about Alfred Hitchcock films all the time, like all the classics, Clark Gable stuff and all this, and like he was brilliant. And then the only other one in my family that died was my mother's sister to my auntie. And when I was like 2, I don't remember her as a kid, but she disappeared when I was like 2. And I think my parents spent their lives trying to look for her and like missing persons places and all this, and couldn't find her for love nor money. And then I think it's about when I was 16, it was Christmas, and there was a knock at the door, and answered the door, and there was this like woman who was like skin and bones, and like I was like, who's this woman? And I was like, turned around, I was like, oh mum, there's someone at the door, and it was my auntie, and I didn't even know. And like there was this whole kind of like, yes, oh come in, like the prodigal woman has returned, come on in. And yeah, and then I started the process of getting to know her and kind of finding out about this aunt that I never knew, and but she knew me as a kid, and it was really weird. And then a year later, she died. Like she was a heroin addict and died of a heroin overdose. But they're the only two kind of senses of grief that I have, and both of those, like one, I kind of barely knew my auntie, but it's weird. Like yeah, grief is different for everyone. And I was saying in this kind of podcast the other day, like grief hits differently for different people. And you know, I only knew my auntie for a short time, but that the span of the grief I felt for that loss was probably longer than I had for my granddad, who I'd known for like 40 years of my life. Like it was really odd. But again, yeah, it's strange. Like I don't know where I was going with that, but now you know a bit more about me. But anyway.
To respond to something that you said earlier about, you know, not having experienced much grief, in your opinion, my response to that would be you don't have to have known grief to be afraid of it. And I think that's more
definitely
the thing that's been coming out is you're seeing these situations that you don't want to happen because you don't want to have to deal with that.
Yeah. I think you're true, because when I was writing these books and like getting myself into the thought process of writing them, because I haven't suffered it, when I'm writing, I'm imagining losing my child or losing my wife. And I don't know why I do it. I'm torturing myself. But like, I was like, but like I literally sit there and I'm like, okay, imagine if you can't kiss your daughter again. What is that going to feel like to you? Or like, you know, imagine like you've lost your child and you're walking around your house and you find their cuddly toy that they always have. And like, what do you do with it? I'd pick it up and I'd smell it and try and see if I could still smell her and like stuff like that. Like, yeah, it's mad. I don't know why writers do this kind of stuff, but anyway.
Inspiration.
Well, more preparation, you know.
Well, yeah.
What would I do if this happens, you know? And then
that too.
Preparing for not eventualities, but I mean, it's kind of the same thing with our dreams. Our dreams put us in weird situations just to say, what would you do? You know, I want to be prepared if this happens. Yeah. Not that you ever wanted to, but
yeah, no. Oh.
So,
yeah.
One of the last questions here, is there anything that you've thought of that might be relevant but hasn't come up on the call? Maybe something that you thought of that you were going to say and the conversation took a left turn?
No, I think we covered it all. It's mad, man. This podcast is brilliant.
Thank you.
That's incredible. And like when I've listened to the other guys you've had on here and other authors and stuff, like just listening to how you just dig in and like get this stuff out is just absolutely brilliant. And it's such a cool resource for us to come on, and it's free. Like I don't have to pay for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you guys are doing an incredible job.
Thank you.
So hats off to you and take a bow. Like it's incredible.
Well, hopefully we can continue doing it and talking to more people. And as a matter of fact, that's one of the things when we get off the phone, after we get off the call or stop recording, we can talk more about that, references and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me hit the closing here. Thank you to Legion Podcast for supporting us on Patreon. If you can support us on Patreon, there's a link to that on our website, as well as a link to buy us a coffee if you'd prefer to do that. There are other links there that might be of interest. Merchandise, a little more information about Chris and myself, and some of the people that we have associated ourselves with. If you can't afford to support financially, then we're in growth mode, so just tell a friend, please.